In the heart of New York City, nestled between towering skyscrapers and bustling streets, stood a restaurant known as Golden Bistro. It was not just any restaurant. It was a place where elegance met exclusivity. The moment you stepped inside, you were greeted by soft lighting, gleaming chandeliers, and the faint hum of classical music playing in the background. Every detail, from the polished marble floors to the crisp white tablecloths, screamed luxury. Patrons who dined here were often wealthy individuals, businessmen in tailored suits, socialites draped in designer gowns, and couples celebrating special occasions with champagne flutes in hand. Golden Bistro was famous for more than its ambiance. Its menu featured dishes crafted by world-class chefs, each plate a work of art designed to tantalize both the eyes and the taste buds. The staff moved gracefully through the space, their uniforms impeccable, their manners polished. This was a place where perfection was expected and anything less was simply unacceptable. For Emily Roberts, a young waitress who had recently joined the team, working at Golden Bistro felt like stepping into a dream and a nightmare all at once. Emily had always dreamed of making something of herself. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, she understood the value of hard work and determination. She took pride in her ability to juggle responsibilities, whether it was helping her younger siblings with homework or working part-time jobs to support her family. But nothing could have prepared her for the fast-paced environment of Golden Bistro. From the moment she clocked in, there was no room for error. Every task, no matter how small, had to be executed flawlessly. Plates needed to be balanced perfectly, orders delivered promptly, and smiles maintained even when exhaustion set in. On this particular evening, the restaurant was unusually busy. Reservations had poured in throughout the day, and the dining area was filled to capacity. Emily darted between tables, her arms laden with plates of gourmet food, her mind racing to keep track of which guest ordered what. She tried to stay calm, reminding herself that she had trained for this. Still, the pressure weighed heavily on her shoulders. As she approached one table to refill water glasses, she noticed a small figure sitting alone near the window. It was a boy, probably no older than 8 years old, dressed in jeans and a simple sweater. His name was Jake Miller, though Emily didn't know that yet. At first glance, Jake seemed out of place among the well-dressed patrons surrounding him. While others sipped wine and discussed business deals, Jake sat quietly, his hands resting on the table. He looked around curiously, taking in the grandeur of the restaurant. Occasionally, he would try to catch the attention of passing waitstaff, including Emily, but they were too preoccupied to notice. Emily assumed he was with his parents, perhaps waiting for them to return from another part of the restaurant. In her mind, he wasn't a priority, not compared to the demanding businessmen or the fussy couple at table 7 who kept sending back their salads. Jake, however, wasn't just an ordinary child visiting Golden Bistro. Unbeknownst to Emily or anyone else serving that night, he was the grandson of Charles Miller, the owner of the restaurant. Charles had built Golden Bistro from the ground up, turning it into one of the most prestigious dining establishments in the city. Though he was now retired, he still kept a close eye on the business, ensuring that it upheld the high standards he had set decades ago. Part of that legacy included teaching his grandson, Jake, the ins and outs of running such a renowned establishment. Charles believed that learning the ropes started early. That's why Jake often accompanied him to the restaurant, observing how everything operated behind the scenes. Tonight, however, Charles had allowed Jake to dine alone for the first time. It was a test of sorts, a chance for Jake to experience the service firsthand and provide feedback later. Jake had been excited about the opportunity, eager to prove himself capable of handling the responsibility. But as the minutes ticked by and no one acknowledged him, his excitement began to wane. Each time Emily passed by, Jake raised his hand slightly, hoping to flag her down. "Excuse me," he called out once, his voice polite but firm. Yet Emily, caught up in the chaos of the evening, barely glanced in his direction. Her focus was entirely on the adults seated at nearby tables, the ones whose wallets likely contained black cards and whose expectations demanded nothing short of perfection. To her, Jake was merely a child, someone whose presence didn't require immediate attention. As the hours dragged on, Jake grew increasingly frustrated. He wasn't used to being ignored. At home, he was surrounded by people who catered to his needs, not because he demanded it, but because he came from a family accustomed to privilege. Here in this glittering restaurant that bore his last name, he felt invisible. He slumped in his chair, staring at the empty plate in front of him, wondering if anyone would ever come to take his order. Nearby, Richard Lawson, a regular customer, observed the scene with growing curiosity. Richard was a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair and a knack for noticing details others overlooked. He had dined at Golden Bistro countless times and prided himself on knowing the staff by name. When he saw Jake sitting alone, seemingly forgotten, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy. Leaning over slightly, Richard addressed the boy. "Hey there, buddy," he said with a friendly smile. "Looks like you're having a tough time getting someone's attention." Jake shrugged, attempting to appear nonchalant despite his mounting irritation. "I guess," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Richard chuckled. "Well, don't worry. I'll make sure someone comes over soon." With that, he flagged down a passing server, not Emily, and discreetly pointed out Jake. The server nodded and promised to assist the boy shortly. But by then, the damage had already been done. Jake's patience was wearing thin, and Emily remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing at table 12. For Emily, the night continued in a blur of activity. She scurried from one end of the restaurant to the other, her thoughts consumed by the endless stream of requests and complaints. She barely registered the faces of the people she served, let alone the lone child sitting by the window. If someone had told her that the boy she kept overlooking was the grandson of the owner, she wouldn't have believed it. After all, how could someone so young hold such significance in a place like Golden Bistro? Little did Emily know, her oversight would lead to a revelation that would change her perspective forever. But for now, she remained trapped in the whirlwind of the evening, oblivious to the fact that the key to her future was sitting just a few feet away, patiently waiting for someone to finally see him. As the evening wore on, Jake's frustration began to show more clearly. He had stopped trying to wave down the waitstaff altogether, instead crossing his arms tightly over his chest and staring at the tablecloth. His initial excitement about dining alone at Golden Bistro had faded into disappointment. For a boy who was used to being noticed and respected, this experience felt foreign and deeply unfair. Emily, still unaware of Jake's identity, continued her rounds. She delivered plates of steak and lobster to nearby tables, refilled glasses of wine, and exchanged polite small talk with guests. Occasionally, she glanced toward Jake's table, but only briefly. To her, he seemed like a child patiently waiting for his parents to return. Surely someone would come to check on him eventually, she thought. But that someone wasn't going to be her, not while there were so many other pressing demands on her time. At one point, Emily paused near Jake's table to adjust the centerpiece, a vase filled with fresh roses. As she leaned over, she caught a glimpse of the boy's face. His expression was sullen, his lips pressed into a thin line. For a fleeting moment, guilt flickered in her mind. Was she neglecting him? Should she stop and ask if he needed anything? But just as quickly as the thought came, it vanished. There were too many other people relying on her, too many tasks competing for her attention. She straightened up, smoothed her apron, and moved on without saying a word. Jake, meanwhile, was growing increasingly restless. He tapped his fingers against the edge of the table, drumming out an impatient rhythm. The restaurant buzzed around him, yet he felt strangely isolated. It was as though an invisible barrier separated him from everyone else. The elegant couples laughing over candlelit dinners, the servers gliding effortlessly between tables, even the pianist playing soft melodies in the corner. None of them seemed to notice him, and the longer he sat there, the more invisible he felt. Nearby, Richard Lawson watched the situation unfold with growing concern. Richard was a kind-hearted man who prided himself on being observant. Over the years, he had developed a habit of noticing things others overlooked, like the quiet dignity of a struggling waiter or the faint sadness in a stranger's eyes. Tonight, his attention kept returning to Jake. Something about the boy's demeanor tugged at his heartstrings. Finally, unable to sit idly by any longer, Richard decided to intervene. He signaled to a passing server, a young man named Daniel, and motioned discreetly toward Jake's table. "That kid over there," Richard said quietly, leaning closer so as not to draw attention. "He's been sitting alone for a while now. Has anyone taken his order?" Daniel frowned, looking over at Jake. "I don't think so," he admitted. "I'll go check." With a nod of thanks, Richard settled back into his chair, satisfied that he had done what he could. Moments later, Daniel approached Jake's table and knelt down to speak to him at eye level. "Hey there," he said warmly. "Sorry we missed you earlier. What can I get for you tonight?" Jake hesitated, unsure whether to express his frustration or simply let it go. In the end, he opted for the latter. "I'll have the chicken parmesan," he said flatly, avoiding eye contact. "Great choice," Daniel replied, forcing a cheerful tone. "Anything to drink with that?" "Just water," Jake muttered. As Daniel walked away, Jake sighed and slumped back in his chair. Though his order had finally been taken, the damage had already been done. The indifference he had experienced left a bitter taste in his mouth, one that no amount of gourmet food could wash away. Back at the kitchen counter, Daniel relayed Jake's order to the chefs, shaking his head slightly as he did so. "Poor kid's been sitting there forever," he murmured to another server. "How did we miss him?" The second server shrugged. "Probably because he's just a kid. People don't expect them to need much attention." Daniel frowned but didn't argue. He knew the restaurant operated under strict protocols, prioritizing certain types of customers over others. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the whole situation. Why was a child dining alone in such a fancy place anyway? Meanwhile, Emily remained oblivious to the conversation unfolding behind her. She was too busy dealing with a complaint from Table 5 where a guest had accused their steak of being overcooked. Apologizing profusely, Emily whisked the plate away and promised to bring a replacement immediately. By the time she returned to the kitchen, sweat trickled down her temples and her feet ached from hours of constant movement. Despite the chaos, a nagging voice in the back of her mind kept reminding her of the boy by the window. Every time she passed his table, she told herself she would stop and check on him next time. But next time never came. Instead, she found herself pulled in different directions, her attention divided among countless other tasks. It wasn't until nearly an hour later that Charles Miller arrived. Tall and distinguished, with silver hair neatly combed and a tailored suit that exuded authority, Charles commanded respect wherever he went. As soon as he stepped through the door, several staff members rushed to greet him. Some offered warm smiles, while others scrambled to ensure his favorite table was ready. Charles acknowledged them all with a polite nod before scanning the room. When his eyes landed on Jake, his expression softened. "Jake, my boy," Charles exclaimed, striding toward the table with long, confident steps. "How are you enjoying your evening?" Jake looked up, startled by his grandfather's sudden appearance. For a moment, he considered brushing off the question with a vague response. But then he remembered the hours he had spent waiting, ignored and forgotten. The frustration bubbled to the surface, and he couldn't hold it in any longer. "I've been waiting forever, Grandpa," Jake blurted out, his voice tinged with annoyance. "Nobody will take my order." Charles raised an eyebrow, his gaze shifting toward the nearest server, Emily, who happened to be walking past at that exact moment. Sensing the tension in the air, she froze mid-step, her tray of dishes trembling slightly in her hands. Slowly, she turned to face Charles, her heart pounding in her chest. "Good evening, Mr. Miller," Emily stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. She hadn't expected to encounter the owner tonight, let alone in such an awkward situation. Before she could say anything else, Charles gestured toward Jake and spoke in a firm, measured tone. "This is my grandson," he said, his words carrying a weight that silenced the surrounding chatter. "Why has he been neglected?" The room seemed to shrink around Emily as every pair of eyes turned toward her. Her cheeks flushed red, and her grip on the tray tightened involuntarily. She opened her mouth to respond but found herself at a loss for words. How could she explain that she had dismissed Jake as unimportant, that she had assumed he was merely tagging along with his parents? The truth sounded absurd, even in her own mind. I'm so sorry, sir," Emily managed to choke out, bowing, her head in shame. I didn't realize. Charles held up a hand, cutting her off. Apologies can come later, he said curtly. Right now, I want you to take care of my grandson. Understand? Yes, sir, Emily replied, her voice trembling. Without wasting another second, she pulled out her notepad and approached Jake's table. This time, she made sure to give him her full attention. What would you like to order? She asked, forcing a smile despite the knot of anxiety twisting in her stomach. Jake hesitated, unsure whether to make her squirm a little longer or simply move on. Eventually, he relented. Chicken parmesan, he said, his tone clipped but not unkind. And water. Of course, Emily said, jotting down the order with shaky hands. Anything else? No, thank you, Jake replied, turning his gaze back to the window. As Emily hurried away, relief washing over her in waves, Charles lingered by the table. He placed a reassuring hand on Jake's shoulder and gave it a gentle squeeze. Don't worry, my boy, he said softly. We'll make sure this doesn't happen again. Jake nodded, though his expression remained guarded. Deep down, he appreciated his grandfather's protectiveness, but part of him wished he hadn't needed to step in at all. He wanted to prove that he could handle things on his own, that he was capable of navigating the world without constant supervision. Tonight, however, had shown him just how far appearances could shape people's perceptions. For Emily, the encounter served as a wake-up call. As she relayed Jake's order to the kitchen staff, her mind raced with thoughts of what might have been. She replayed the evening in her head, wondering how she could have missed such an obvious sign. The truth was simple. She had judged Jake based on his age and appearance, dismissing him as someone unworthy of her immediate attention. Now, faced with the reality of her mistake, she vowed to do better, not just for Jake, but for every customer who walked through the doors of Golden Bistro. Little did she know this moment would mark the beginning of a journey that would teach her valuable lessons about humility, empathy, and the importance of seeing beyond surface-level impressions. After the confrontation with Charles Miller, Emily felt a mix of emotions swirling inside her: shame, guilt, and a deep sense of regret. She couldn't believe she had overlooked someone so important, someone who was essentially part of the restaurant's very foundation. Jake wasn't just any child. He was the grandson of the man who owned Golden Bistro, the man whose name commanded respect in every corner of the establishment. Yet for hours, Emily had treated him as though he were invisible. Determined to make amends, Emily threw herself into ensuring Jake's experience improved dramatically. She returned to his table with a renewed sense of purpose, balancing plates of appetizers she hoped would win back some goodwill. Here you go, she said brightly, setting down a small plate of bruschetta and another of creamy spinach dip. These are compliments from the kitchen. I hope you enjoy them while your main course is being prepared. Jake glanced at the dishes, his expression softening slightly. He picked up a piece of bread and nibbled on it, still hesitant to fully forgive Emily. But the gesture wasn't lost on him. For the first time that evening, someone was paying attention to him, not because they had to, but because they genuinely wanted to make things right. Emily stayed by the table for a moment longer, offering Jake a warm smile. If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to let me know. I'll be happy to help. Her words were sincere, and Jake could hear it in her voice. Though he didn't respond immediately, he gave a slight nod, signaling that he appreciated her effort. As Emily walked away, Charles watched the interaction closely. He admired her willingness to correct her mistake and take responsibility for her actions. It was clear to him that Emily wasn't the type of person to dwell on errors without learning from them. After all, everyone made mistakes. It was how they handled those moments that truly mattered. Later that night, when the dinner rush began to wind down and most of the diners had left, Charles called Emily aside. The restaurant was quieter now, the soft hum of cleanup replacing the earlier buzz of conversation. Emily approached nervously, unsure of what to expect. Would Charles reprimand her further? Or worse, would he decide she wasn't fit to work at Golden Bistro? Emily, Charles began, his tone calm and measured. I want to talk about what happened tonight. Emily swallowed hard, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Sir, I'm so sorry," she blurted out before he could continue. "I never meant to ignore Jake. I didn't realize—" Charles held up a hand to stop her. "I understand," he said gently. "Mistakes happen. What matters is how we respond to them. And I have to say, I was impressed by how quickly you stepped up once you realized your error." Relief washed over Emily, though she remained cautious. "Thank you, sir," she replied softly. "I promise I'll do better moving forward." "I know you will," Charles said with a nod. "But let me share something with you. In this business, and in life, it's easy to judge people based on appearances. We see someone young or casually dressed and assume they don't deserve our immediate attention. But looks can be deceiving. That boy you ignored tonight, he's not just my grandson, he's also the future of this restaurant." Emily's eyes widened as the weight of his words sank in. She had underestimated Jake in more ways than one. Not only had she dismissed him because of his age, but she hadn't considered that he might play a significant role in the success of Golden Bistro. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut, leaving her even more determined to change her approach. Over the next few days, Emily found herself reflecting on the incident constantly. She replayed every detail in her mind, analyzing where she had gone wrong and how she could prevent similar situations in the future. One thing became abundantly clear. She needed to treat every customer equally, regardless of their age, appearance, or demeanor. No one should ever feel invisible under her watch again. In the weeks that followed, Emily threw herself into her work with renewed energy. She paid closer attention to the smaller details, making sure no guest, no matter how unassuming, was overlooked. Whether it was a teenager celebrating a birthday or an elderly couple enjoying a quiet meal, Emily greeted each person with genuine warmth and attentiveness. Her colleagues noticed the shift in her attitude and commended her for it. Even Daniel, the server who had initially taken Jake's order, remarked on how much more attentive Emily had become. Jake, too, noticed the difference. He continued to visit Golden Bistro regularly, often accompanied by his grandfather. Each time, Emily made a point to check on him personally, asking if everything was to his liking and engaging him in light conversation. At first, Jake remained somewhat reserved, still holding on to the memory of being ignored. But as Emily consistently demonstrated her sincerity, he began to open up. One evening, during one of Jake's visits, Emily struck up a casual chat with him while refilling his water glass. "How's school going?" she asked, her tone friendly and curious. "It's okay," Jake replied, shrugging. "Math is kind of boring, but I like science." "That's great," Emily said enthusiastically. "What kind of science do you like?" "Chemistry," Jake answered, perking up slightly. "We're learning about experiments right now, it's pretty cool." Emily smiled, genuinely interested in his response. "Sounds fun. Maybe someday you'll invent something amazing." Jake grinned, clearly pleased by the compliment. For the first time since their rocky start, he felt seen, not just as the owner's grandson, but as an individual with interests and aspirations. Their brief exchange marked the beginning of a newfound rapport between them. Meanwhile, Charles observed these interactions with quiet satisfaction. He had always believed in giving people second chances, and Emily was proving to be a shining example of why that philosophy worked. Her ability to learn from her mistakes and grow as a person impressed him deeply. More importantly, her dedication to improving herself reflected positively on the restaurant as a whole. One afternoon, as Emily was preparing for the evening shift, Charles pulled her aside once again. This time, however, his demeanor was different. There was a hint of pride in his voice as he spoke. "Emily, I've been watching you closely these past few weeks," he began. "You've shown incredible growth, not just in your work ethic, but in your mindset. You've earned my trust." Emily blinked, surprised by the unexpected praise. "Thank you, Mr. Miller," she said humbly. "That means a lot." "There's more," Charles continued. "I've decided to promote you to head server. It's a position that requires leadership, responsibility, and a commitment to excellence, all qualities I've seen in you." For a moment, Emily was speechless, Promoted? To head server? The news felt surreal, almost too good to be true. When she finally found her voice, she stammered, I don't know what to say. Thank you so much, sir. I won't let you down. I know you won't, Charles said with a reassuring smile. This promotion isn't just about rewarding good behavior, it's about recognizing potential, and I believe you have the potential to achieve great things here. The announcement came as a shock to the rest of the staff. Many of them congratulated Emily, praising her for turning a difficult situation into an opportunity for growth. Others expressed mild jealousy, wondering how she had managed to climb the ranks so quickly. But Emily didn't let the negativity bother her. Instead, she focused on proving herself worthy of the promotion. Her new role brought additional responsibilities, including training newer servers and overseeing daily operations. At first, the added workload felt overwhelming, but Emily tackled each challenge with determination. She sought advice from senior staff members, learned from her own experiences, and gradually grew into the position. Over time, she became a source of guidance and support for her colleagues, earning their respect and admiration. As for Jake, he continued to visit Golden Bistro, growing wiser with each passing month. Under his grandfather's mentorship, he learned valuable lessons about patience, humility, and the importance of treating others with kindness. Watching Emily transform from someone who had once ignored him into someone who genuinely cared about his experience taught him that people were capable of change, if given the chance. And so, what had started as a simple misunderstanding blossomed into a story of redemption, growth, and mutual respect. Golden Bistro remained a symbol of excellence, not just for its food and service, but for the way it brought people together, even when they least expected it. Emily's promotion to head server marked a turning point, not only in her career but also in the way she viewed herself and others. The weight of her new responsibilities pushed her to grow in ways she hadn't anticipated. Every day, she arrived at Golden Bistro with a renewed sense of purpose, determined to lead by example. She knew that being a head server wasn't just about managing tasks. It was about fostering a positive environment for both staff and customers. Her interactions with Jake became a cornerstone of this growth. Jake, too, had changed since that fateful evening when he'd been overlooked. He still visited the restaurant regularly, often accompanied by his grandfather, Charles. But now there was a noticeable shift in his demeanor. The frustration and disappointment he had felt before were gradually replaced by curiosity and confidence. Watching Emily take ownership of her mistakes and work hard to improve herself inspired him. He began to see the value of patience and understanding, qualities that would serve him well as he prepared to one day inherit the family business. One evening, during one of Jake's solo visits, Emily approached his table with a warm smile. "Hey, Jake," she said cheerfully. "How's everything going tonight?" Jake looked up from his menu and grinned. "Good, thanks. I think I'll have the grilled salmon." "Great choice," Emily replied, jotting down his order. "Anything to drink with that?" "Just lemonade," Jake answered, closing his menu. As Emily turned to leave, Jake hesitated for a moment before calling out, "Emily?" She stopped and turned back, her expression curious. "Yes?" "I just wanted to say thanks," Jake said, his voice soft but sincere. "You've been really nice to me lately. I appreciate it." The words caught Emily off guard, and for a brief moment she felt a lump rise in her throat. She hadn't expected gratitude from Jake, not after how she had treated him initially. But hearing those simple words meant more to her than any compliment from a regular customer ever could. "Thank you, Jake," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotions bubbling inside her. "It's my pleasure." From that point on, their relationship blossomed into something genuine and mutual. Emily no longer saw Jake as merely the owner's grandson. She saw him as a bright, thoughtful young boy with a lot to offer, and Jake, in turn, no longer viewed Emily as the waitress who had ignored him. He saw her as someone who had shown him the importance of second chances. Charles watched these developments with quiet pride. He had always believed in teaching through experience rather than lectures, and seeing Jake learn valuable life lessons firsthand filled him with satisfaction. He often joined Jake for dinner at Golden Bistro, using these moments to discuss the intricacies of running a successful business. Jake soaked up every word, eager to prove himself worthy of carrying on the family legacy. During one such dinner, Charles leaned back in his chair and glanced at Jake thoughtfully. "You know," he said, "there's more to being a leader than just making decisions. It's about understanding people, their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their potential." Jake tilted his head, intrigued. "Like how you gave Emily a second chance?" Charles nodded, a small smile playing on his lips. "Exactly. People aren't perfect, Jake. We all make mistakes. What sets great leaders apart is their ability to recognize when someone deserves another shot, and then give them the tools they need to succeed." Jake pondered this for a moment, his brow furrowing slightly. "Do you think I'll be able to do that someday? Be a good leader, I mean." "I have no doubt," Charles replied firmly. "But it won't happen overnight. Leadership is something you build over time, through experiences like this. You're already learning important lessons about patience, empathy, and fairness. Keep that mindset and you'll go far." Jake smiled, feeling a surge of determination. He wanted nothing more than to make his grandfather proud and uphold the standards that had made Golden Bistro so renowned. But he also realized that leadership wasn't just about maintaining excellence. It was about creating an environment where everyone felt valued and respected. Back at the kitchen counter, Emily was juggling multiple orders, her mind racing to keep track of each request. As head server, she had learned to stay calm under pressure, even when the restaurant was packed to capacity. Her team looked to her for guidance, and she took her role seriously. When a new server struggled to balance plates or forgot a customer's special request, Emily stepped in without hesitation, offering help and encouragement. "Here, let me show you," she said one evening to a nervous trainee named Lisa. "Always start with the heavier items on your tray. It keeps everything balanced. And remember, if you're unsure about anything, don't hesitate to ask for help. We're a team and we support each other." Lisa nodded gratefully, her confidence slowly returning. Emily's willingness to mentor others earned her the respect of her colleagues, who admired her humility and dedication. They knew she wasn't above rolling up her sleeves and diving into the chaos alongside them, whether it was refilling salt shakers or cleaning up spills. Despite her growing responsibilities, Emily never lost sight of the lessons she had learned from her encounter with Jake. She made it a point to greet every customer warmly regardless of their age or appearance. Whether it was a couple celebrating their anniversary or a lone traveler stopping by for a quick bite, Emily ensured that each person felt welcomed and cared for. Her efforts didn't go unnoticed. Many diners left glowing reviews, praising the exceptional service they received at Golden Bistro. One particularly busy Friday night, Richard Lawson returned to the restaurant. He had become a familiar face over the months, often dining alone while reading a book or catching up on emails. Tonight, however, he seemed unusually cheerful, raising his glass to Emily as she passed by. "You've done wonders here," Richard remarked when she stopped to check on him. "This place feels different somehow, more welcoming." Emily blushed, surprised by the compliment. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson, that means a lot." "It's true," Richard insisted. "I remember that night when Jake was sitting alone. Things could have gone badly, but instead it turned into an opportunity for growth, for everyone involved." His words struck a chord with Emily. She realized that the incident hadn't just impacted her and Jake. It had rippled outward, touching the entire atmosphere of the restaurant. By embracing accountability and striving to improve, she had helped create a culture of kindness and inclusivity, a culture that benefited both staff and patrons alike. As the weeks turned into months, Golden Bistro continued to thrive. Its reputation for excellence remained intact, but now it was bolstered by a newfound warmth that set it apart from other high-end establishments. Customers weren't just coming for the food, they were coming for the experience, the sense of belonging that permeated every corner of the restaurant. For Emily, the journey had been transformative. She had started as a struggling waitress, overwhelmed by the demands of her job, and had grown into a confident leader who inspired those around her. Her mistake with Jake had been painful, but it had also been a catalyst for change, a reminder that even the smallest actions could have profound consequences. And for Jake, the lessons he had learned extended far beyond the walls of Golden Bistro. He understood now that true leadership wasn't about authority or titles. It was about connection, empathy, and the courage to admit when you were wrong. These insights would guide him as he stepped into his role as the future owner of the restaurant, ensuring that the values of respect and integrity remained at its core. In the end, what had begun as a simple misunderstanding evolved into a story of redemption and growth, a testament to the power of second chances and the enduring impact of treating others with dignity. Golden Bistro stood not only as a beacon of culinary excellence, but also as a place where lives were touched, perspectives shifted, and bonds formed. And within its elegant walls, Emily and Jake found themselves forever changed by the unexpected intersection of their paths. As the months passed, Golden Bistro continued to shine as one of the most prestigious dining establishments in New York City. But behind its polished exterior and glowing reputation lay a story of transformation, one that had touched the lives of everyone involved, from the staff to the patrons. For Emily Roberts, her journey from a struggling waitress to head server was nothing short of remarkable. She had grown not only in skill, but also in character, learning lessons that would stay with her for the rest of her life. Her relationship with Jake Miller had evolved into something truly special. What had started as an awkward misunderstanding blossomed into a genuine friendship built on mutual respect and understanding. Jake, now more comfortable in his role as the owner's grandson, often visited the restaurant alone, eager to observe how things operated. He enjoyed chatting with Emily during these visits, asking questions about her day or sharing stories about school. Their conversations were light and easy yet meaningful, as both of them had learned valuable lessons from their initial encounter. One afternoon, while Emily was organizing menus before the evening shift, Jake approached her with a thoughtful expression. "Emily," he began hesitantly, "do you ever feel like you're still making up for what happened that night?" Emily paused, surprised by the question. She set the menus down and turned to face him. "Sometimes," she admitted honestly, "but I try not to dwell on it too much. Instead, I focus on doing better every day, making sure no one feels ignored or unimportant." Jake nodded slowly, his gaze dropping to the floor. "I think about it sometimes too," he confessed. "Not because I'm mad or anything, it's just, it taught me that people don't always see things the way they seem. Like, you thought I was just a kid waiting for my parents, but I was actually trying to learn about the business." Emily smiled softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You're right. That's exactly what happened, and I'm so glad you gave me a chance to fix it. If you hadn't, I wouldn't be where I am today." Jake looked up at her, his eyes bright with curiosity. "Do you think other people can change like you did, even if they make big mistakes?" "Absolutely," Emily replied without hesitation. "Everyone deserves a second chance. The key is being willing to listen, learn, and grow. You've shown me that, Jake. Watching how patient and understanding you've been has inspired me to be the same way with others." Their conversation lingered in Jake's mind long after Emily returned to her duties. He realized that forgiveness wasn't just about letting go of anger. It was about giving someone the opportunity to prove themselves again. This realization deepened his appreciation for Emily and strengthened his resolve to carry those values forward as he prepared to take on a larger role in the family business. Meanwhile, Charles Miller observed these developments with quiet pride. He had always believed in leading by example, and seeing Emily and Jake grow together reinforced his faith in the power of patience and empathy. During one of their regular dinners at the restaurant, Charles leaned back in his chair and addressed Jake thoughtfully. "You know, running a business isn't just about numbers and profits," he said. "It's about creating a place where people feel valued, not just customers, but employees too." Jake nodded, recalling how Emily had transformed the atmosphere at Golden Bistro. "I think Emily understands that," he said. "She makes everyone feel like they matter, even if they're having a bad day." "That's leadership," Charles replied, his voice filled with admiration. "And it's something you'll need to cultivate as you step into your role." Remember, the success of this restaurant isn't just about the food we serve. It's about the connections we build and the memories we create. Jake absorbed his grandfather's words, feeling a renewed sense of responsibility. He wanted Golden Bistro to continue thriving, not just as a symbol of luxury, but as a place where people felt welcomed and respected. With Emily's guidance and Charles's wisdom, he knew he was on the right path. The changes at Golden Bistro weren't limited to Emily and Jake. The entire staff benefited from the shift in culture that Emily had helped foster. As head server, she encouraged open communication and teamwork, ensuring that everyone felt supported. When new servers joined the team, she took the time to train them personally, sharing tips and advice she had picked up along the way. Her kindness and dedication inspired others to follow suit, creating a positive feedback loop that elevated the entire dining experience. Customers noticed the difference too. Reviews poured in praising not only the exquisite food, but also the exceptional service. One reviewer wrote, "Golden Bistro isn't just a restaurant, it's an experience. From the moment you walk in, you feel like family." Another commented, "The staff goes above and beyond to make sure you're happy. It's clear they care about their guests." Even Richard Lawson, who had witnessed the incident with Jake months earlier, couldn't help but marvel at the transformation. During one of his visits, he pulled Emily aside and said, "You've done something extraordinary here. This place feels different, warmer, more inviting. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." Emily blushed at the praise, humbled by the recognition. "Thank you, Mr. Lawson. That means a lot. But it's not just me. It's the whole team. We all work hard to make sure our guests leave happy." Richard chuckled, shaking his head. "Modesty suits you, Emily, but don't sell yourself short. You've set the tone for everyone else. That kind of leadership is rare." As the year drew to a close, Golden Bistro hosted its annual holiday party, a celebration for both staff and loyal patrons. The event was held in the main dining room, decorated with twinkling lights and festive garlands. Servers mingled with guests, laughter filled the air, and the aroma of delicious food wafted through the space. It was a night to reflect on the past and look forward to the future. During the festivities, Charles stood at the front of the room, raising a glass to address the crowd. "Tonight we celebrate not just another successful year, but the incredible people who make this restaurant what it is," he began, his voice warm and steady. "Each of you plays a vital role in creating the magic that happens here every day. But there are two individuals I'd like to highlight tonight: Emily Roberts and my grandson, Jake Miller." The room erupted in applause as all eyes turned toward Emily and Jake, seated near the center of the room. Emily's cheeks flushed red and Jake grinned nervously, clearly caught off guard by the attention. Charles continued, "Emily has shown us the power of resilience and growth. She turned a challenging moment into an opportunity to lead with compassion and integrity. And Jake, well, he reminds us that leadership starts with understanding and humility. Together they embody the spirit of Golden Bistro, a spirit of excellence, inclusivity, and heart." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she listened to Charles's words. She glanced at Jake, who gave her a reassuring smile. In that moment, she realized how far they had both come since that fateful evening. What had once been a source of regret had become a foundation for something beautiful, a bond forged through shared experiences and mutual respect. After the speech, guests lined up to congratulate Emily and Jake, offering hugs, handshakes, and heartfelt compliments. Even some of the newer staff members who hadn't been present during the original incident expressed gratitude for the positive influence Emily had on the team. "You've made such a difference here," one server said earnestly. "We're lucky to have you." As the night wound down, Emily found herself standing near the window, gazing out at the glittering city skyline. Jake joined her a few moments later, holding 2 cups of hot cocoa. "Here," he said, handing her one. "Thought you might need a break." Emily accepted the drink with a grateful smile. "Thanks, Jake, you always know just what to do." They stood side by side in companionable silence, sipping their cocoa and watching the snowflakes drift lazily past the glass. Finally, Jake broke the quiet. "Do you think we'll remember this night years from now? Emily laughed softly, her breath fogging the window pane. Oh, I'm sure we will. Nights like this don't happen often. They remind us why we do what we do, to create moments people will cherish forever. Jake nodded, his expression thoughtful. Yeah. And maybe someday, when I'm running this place, I'll tell my own grandkids about it, about how a waitress and a boy turned a mistake into something amazing. Emily reached over and ruffled his hair affectionately. Just promise me one thing. You won't let them ignore any kids sitting by the window, okay? Jake laughed, and the sound echoed warmly through the room. Together, they turned away from the window and rejoined the celebration, ready to embrace whatever the future held. For Emily and Jake, the journey was far from over. But they faced it with confidence, knowing they had already achieved something remarkable, turning a simple misunderstanding into a story of redemption, connection, and hope. The months that followed the holiday party at Golden Bistro marked a new chapter for Emily Roberts and Jake Miller. The bond they had formed continued to grow stronger, shaping not only their personal lives but also the future of the restaurant itself. Emily's role as head server had become more than just a job. It was a calling. She poured her heart into every aspect of her work, from mentoring new staff members to ensuring that each guest felt valued and cared for. Her leadership style was rooted in empathy and respect, qualities that inspired those around her. Jake, too, was stepping into his role with increasing confidence. Under his grandfather Charles's guidance, he began taking on more responsibilities at the restaurant. He spent hours observing the kitchen staff, learning how dishes were prepared and plated. He shadowed the managers, gaining insight into the logistics of running a high-end establishment. But what fascinated him most was watching Emily interact with both customers and employees. Her ability to connect with people, to make them feel seen and appreciated, left a lasting impression on him. One evening, as the restaurant buzzed with activity, Jake approached Emily during a rare quiet moment. "Do you ever get tired of doing all this?" he asked curiously, gesturing toward the bustling dining room. Emily chuckled, leaning against the counter for a brief rest. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I think about how much this place means to everyone, the staff, the customers, even your family. It's not just a restaurant, it's a community. That makes it worth it." Jake nodded thoughtfully, absorbing her words. "I want to make sure it stays that way when I take over someday. Not just fancy food and nice decorations, but a place where people feel like they belong." "You will," Emily said confidently. "You already understand what matters most. The people. Keep that in mind, and you'll do great." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of diners, and Emily excused herself to greet them. As she moved through the room, her presence commanded attention, not because she demanded it, but because she radiated warmth and professionalism. Watching her, Jake realized that true leadership wasn't about authority or control. It was about creating an environment where others could thrive. Charles, who had been quietly observing from a nearby table, couldn't have been prouder. He had always hoped that Jake would inherit not just the business, but also the values that made it successful. Seeing his grandson embrace those principles filled him with a deep sense of satisfaction. One afternoon, as they sat together reviewing financial reports, Charles turned to Jake with a thoughtful expression. "You know," he began, "running a restaurant is about more than making money. It's about leaving a legacy, a mark on the world that reflects who you are. What kind of legacy do you want to leave?" Jake hesitated, considering the question carefully. "I guess I'd want people to remember Golden Bistro as a place where they felt welcome, where no matter who they were or how much money they had, they knew they mattered." Charles smiled, placing a hand on Jake's shoulder. "That's exactly the right answer. And if you keep leading with that mindset, you'll honor everything this restaurant stands for." With his grandfather's encouragement, Jake threw himself into learning every detail of the business. He attended meetings with suppliers, studied marketing strategies, and even pitched ideas for new menu items. His enthusiasm was contagious, inspiring the staff to rally behind him. They saw in Jake the same passion and dedication that had made Charles such a respected figure in the industry. Meanwhile, Emily continued to shine in her role as head server. Her promotion had opened doors she hadn't imagined possible, earning her recognition not just within Golden Bistro but across the city's culinary scene. Local food critics praised her for transforming the service experience at the restaurant, while colleagues admired her for fostering a supportive and inclusive workplace culture. Yet despite her growing success, Emily remained humble, always quick to credit her team for their hard work. One particularly busy Saturday night, Richard Lawson returned to the restaurant, this time accompanied by a friend. As Emily greeted them, Richard introduced her to his companion, a journalist writing a feature on New York City's finest dining establishments. "This is Emily," Richard said proudly. "She's one of the reasons Golden Bistro is so special." The journalist raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Oh? Tell me more." Emily laughed nervously, brushing off the compliment. "I'm just doing my job," she said modestly. "But if we're special, it's because of our team. Everyone here works incredibly hard to make sure our guests have a memorable experience." The journalist scribbled notes furiously, clearly impressed. After dinner, she pulled Emily aside for a brief interview, asking about her journey and the changes she had implemented at the restaurant. When the article was published weeks later, it highlighted Emily's leadership and the positive impact she had made on Golden Bistro. For Emily, the recognition was humbling, but more importantly, it reinforced her belief in the power of kindness and teamwork. As the seasons changed, so did the dynamics at Golden Bistro. Older staff members retired, making way for fresh faces, eager to learn and contribute. Emily took these newcomers under her wing, sharing the lessons she had learned along the way. "Never underestimate anyone," she often reminded them. "You never know who might walk through that door or what they might teach you." Jake, now a regular fixture at the restaurant, embraced his role as a mentor as well. He loved introducing young servers to the intricacies of fine dining, teaching them the importance of attention to detail and genuine hospitality. Together, he and Emily created an atmosphere where everyone felt empowered to grow and succeed. Years passed, and Golden Bistro remained a cornerstone of New York City's dining scene. Its reputation for excellence endured, bolstered by the warmth and inclusivity that had become its hallmark. Customers continued to flock to the restaurant, drawn not just by the exquisite food, but by the sense of belonging it offered. For Emily, the journey had come full circle. She had started as a struggling waitress, unsure of her place in the world, and had grown into a confident leader who inspired those around her. Her relationship with Jake had evolved from an awkward misunderstanding into a lifelong friendship, built on mutual respect and shared values. And for Jake, the lessons he had learned at Golden Bistro shaped the person he became. When Charles finally stepped down, passing the reins to his grandson, Jake carried forward the legacy with grace and determination. He ensured that the restaurant remained a place where everyone, from wealthy patrons to wide-eyed children, felt welcomed and valued. On the day Jake officially became the owner of Golden Bistro, Emily stood beside him, beaming with pride. "You've got this," she whispered, giving his arm a reassuring squeeze. "I couldn't have done it without you," Jake replied, his voice thick with emotion. "You taught me what really matters." As they cut the ceremonial ribbon together, surrounded by cheering staff and loyal customers, Emily reflected on how far they had come. What had once been a simple misunderstanding had blossomed into something extraordinary, a story of redemption, growth, and connection. It was proof that even the smallest moments could lead to profound change, shaping lives in ways no one could have predicted. Golden Bistro stood as a testament to that truth, a place where people came not just to eat, but to share experiences, forge relationships, and create memories. And at its heart were two individuals who had learned, through trial and triumph, the true meaning of leadership, forgiveness, and the enduring power of human connection.